Well, it's Friday again. Just means time to deploy. Jim is back with me for another exciting week of Deploy on Friday, episode 88. Hey, there you go. Lucky 88.
Hey,
How was
happy
your week,
Friday.
Jim?
Yeah,
That's
good.
right.
Good week. Lovely weather down here in Melbourne. Everything going
You
to
melting
plan.
yet?
Full speed. Tomorrow begin to melt, I think. Tomorrow we hit 40s, which must be over 90 or something. I don't know what, the Fahrenheit conversion.
Yeah. It's like 1.2 plus 32 plus times 1.2 or something like that. Anyways, probably
Don't
mid
forget
to
to
high
stand on your left
90s.
foot while you do it.
Yeah, true.
How are you?
Yeah, good. For those who don't know, we are suffering a bit of a heat wave here in Australia, which is always a fun time. So there you go. But anyways, without that, let's get into the news. This is an article from Liam, another excerpt from his lovely white paper entitled Kubernetes Delivery Unlocked. He'll be having a webinar soon. We'll get to that in a second. The title for this is GitOps right for you? So this explores obviously the concept of GitOps, its benefits, considerations of its implementation. So those who don't know, GitOps is a set of principles that build upon what we espouse in the continuous delivery and DevOps best practices. So namely, things like, emphasizing the use of declarative configurations, stored version control in repositories like Git, thus the name GitOps. And so the reason why this is really powerful is because obviously it allows folks like yourself, the developers, to utilize familiar workflows and tools, and they can use them for both development and deployment, which is great. And so Liam talks a lot about whether or not GitOps is something that is meaningful for you. And so it talks about the four main principles of GitOps, which is declarative, versioned and immutable, pulled automatically, and continuously reconciled. And so this is really easy to surmise. I know that, Jim, you and your team probably do a little bit of this, but declarative, obviously, systems are defined declaratively, so typically through a config file. Versioned and immutable means the desired state is stored in a version-controlled and immutable manner. And you'll typically see this with things like Terraform when defining configuration. So the idea here is that you'll reflect the state in your configs. Pulled automatically, of course, means that anytime you have an agent that's doing a build or anything like that, or deployment, the desired state is a reflection of what's in source, and then continues to reconcile, obviously, observing the actual system. Excuse me, I'm getting emotional. The actual system.
He's so passionate about GitOps, John.
Yeah,
You should hear him.
I know. It's making me verklempt. The actual system state and the attempt to apply the desired state. And so if you're at all interested about learning more about whether or not this should be right for you, you should check this out. Liam's done a great article here. Obviously, it identifies a lot of the challenges. There's a bit of a steep learning curve because it is a bit different, right? Like, let's be honest, right? It is applying GitOps in this sort of fashion can be a challenge. Have you observed that yourself, or are you just,
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different way to think about things, right? Like for so long, we've been thinking about things in what do I need to do to this system to change it, not what I want it to look like.
Yeah, oftentimes it's the tools that trip up a lot of developers, and then the processes and the practices around utilizing those tools in the concept in the context of GitOps. Obviously, probably I would argue there's a lot more complexity involved in a situation like this. Secrets is always a challenging one because obviously with text files and the like, you got to be careful about where you pull and how you store. Good news is if you're using something like GitHub, it will notify you automatically and reject PRs or changes that include secrets, which is always a good thing. In fact, we're actually one of the partners available inside of GitHub. If you accidentally leak an API key of your Octopus instance, we'll reject the PR and notify you, which is awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So these and other sorts of things, challenging obviously to find out, but definitely worth checking out Liam's article on Is GitOps right for you? So there you go. More control over deployment freezes, recurring freezes, and freeze by tenant. So deployment freezes, a new feature in Octopus Deploy. We've added new capabilities, specifically two new capabilities. The ability to do what are called recurring deployment freezes. So you can schedule a freeze to occur automatically at regular intervals. So you can say like daily, weekly, monthly, etc. The reason why that's beneficial is obviously because it aligns with any kind of regular maintenance you have. And then the other one, of course, is tenant-specific freezes, which is always crucial. So you can actually have deployment freezes target or be scoped to specific tenants within a specific environment and project. So this sort of granularity, I know it's a kind of a weird term, but the granularity is pretty advantageous, obviously, because if you're managing deployments across different tenants and regions, like time zones, etc., allowing your teams to prevent deployments to particular customers or branches without affecting the entire project is going to be a benefit. So if you haven't seen how deployment freeze is set up, this is what the dialog looks like. This is an example of a Christmas shutdown. So here we can see we've got a name, the schedule, and then here is the new part. This recurrence repeats annually on December 24th. So that's a new feature available in deployment freezes. Are you guys using deployment freezes at all? Do we use deployment freezes? I think we do.
I don't know if we actually use deployment freezes themselves. We definitely did do a freeze.
Yes,
we did. I didn't try and ship anything over Christmas anyway.
I haven't looked at our deployment instance that we use for deploying Octopus Deploy, whether we're actually utilizing freezes there. But I know that different teams have their different projects set up. But we do run on latest, obviously. But I'd be curious to know if we're using those freezes. Incidentally, we also, if you're doing any automation or integration, they've actually integrated this in the Go client. So the Go client is the underpinning of our CLI and is also used by our Terraform provider. And so if you're wanting to configure deployment freezes via configuration through the Terraform provider, it is supported. In addition to that, if you're doing any automation via the Go client, it is available through our REST API as well. So the Go client is essentially our REST client API in Go, and that is the basis of which we build our CLI. There you go, deployment freezes, new features, awesome stuff. This is an article that we didn't cover last week, but I think bears mentioning because Matt Casperson, anything he writes is always awesome. So he wrote this article entitled Repeatable CDK Deployments with Octopus. And if you're not familiar with CDKs, these are cloud development kits. Basically, they're used by developers to define cloud infrastructure using programming languages, things like TypeScript and Python, etc. And then that allows you to basically integrate your application code and infrastructure into a single code base. It's super advantageous. So you don't have to have your config file in a TF file if you're doing Terraform somewhere, and then your application code somewhere else. CDKs allow you to basically coalesce those. This approach of utilizing CDKs is different than what you might see with AWS. We're using serverless application models or SAMs, and so there's lots of different ways to do this. So Matt's article talks a little bit about this, talks about how to do CDK application deployment with Octopus Deploy. And basically, if you're doing this, it's recommended that you use our CDK command line interface. Sorry, not ours, but the CDK command line interface for the platform of choice they're using. And so if you're utilizing AWS, there's the AWS CLI. Matt provides an example in here that shows just that. He also talks about the differences between SAM and CDK. But down here, he talks a little bit about how utilizing the AWS CLI for doing those types of deployments and how it might look from an integrated example. Here's how he's deploying the packages here, utilizing Octopus, obviously talking about environment progression, etc. So this got picked up, obviously, by a few folks around the internets and was touted a little bit there. So kind of cool to see that get picked up online, which is awesome to see. So repeatable CDK deployments with Octopus. Check it out. Just to remind folks, we've got some webinars coming up. We've got our Introducing Config as Code for Runbooks webinar coming up on February 11th. I'm really looking forward to this. This one's already starting to fill up fast. So we got 3 members of the product team talking about Config as Code for Runbooks. I know that you've been waiting for this feature, Jim.
Indeed. About $1 for every time I heard about Config as Code for Runbooks, we'd all be rich.
I know. This is me sitting on my laptop here, just enjoying the awesomeness of our Config as Code. So there you go. Yeah. So that's February 11th. Octopus 101, obviously, every month we run those. And then later on, speaking of Liam, we've got a webinar version of his Kubernetes Delivery Unlocked white paper. So this is a white paper you can check out up on our site. It's at /publications. And on February 18th, Liam and I will be having basically a bit of a chat. Liam will be sharing some of his insights that he's discovered around doing Kubernetes-based deployments, obviously talking a lot about Octopus Deploy in the context of that. We utilize Octopus Deploy for doing a lot of Kubernetes, and of course, we utilize Kubernetes for doing a wide variety of deployments. So check those out and more at octopus.com/webinars. And if you're all in the more, if you're more in the I like to meet people in person camp, you can check out our events that are coming up. We've got 2 in particular, both in London, DevOps Live and KubeCon Europe. And we will be at both March 12th and 13th, and then April 1st to the 4th. So check it out there. Would love to see you at one of the events. And then wrapping things up, we have our Codefresh channel up at /Codefresh CICD is the channel name. We have a bunch of new videos available for product features. So if you're all curious about finding out more about Codefresh, from how it supports environments to how you integrate it with flows into production, some of the basics, etc. We have a bunch of videos that have been done and basically are, sort of highlight films of the latest and greatest features. So you can check those out. Really cool to see these features be made available in the form of videos, and you can kind of follow along here and see the videos for yourself. And so it's definitely worth checking out there if you're all curious. So that's at /Codefresh CICD is the account name, and we've got lots of videos there for you to take a look at how to utilize Codefresh, so you can follow along there, which is awesome. And that, as they say, is the week that was. So, any final words there, Jim, before we wrap up?
Nothing from me. Looking forward to learning more about CDKs and watching those Codefresh videos.
Nice. Awesome stuff. Yeah. Definitely got to educate myself on the Codefresh side a little bit more. I can always use any insight there. Speaking of next week, I will be overseas, so I don't think we're going to be recording a show next week. But if we do, well, it might be a surprise, but chances are we may not. But definitely the week after we'll be back. So on behalf of myself and Jim, happy deployments, everyone. Take care.